Hello and welcome to another episode of Truth Explained. I'm Hugo Pellegrino, and today I'll be talking about a what if. As always, this program is also being broadcasted with subtitles with English, Spanish, Portuguese, and French. Thank you very much for watching today's videos, and please do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Today I'll be talking about a dramatic step in order to conquer global warming. But imagine one thing. What if we decided to convert all of the Gulf Coast from the United States of America into a giant forest? Should that help? Let's find out.
According to an article that was published by Matthew J. McCarthy, Benjamin Dimmitt, Sebastian Di Geronimo and Frankie Miller-Carger, this year sea level rise is impacting the longest undeveloped stretch of coastline in the contiguous United States, the Florida Big Bend. Due to its low elevation and a higher than global average local rate of sea level rise, the region is losing coastal forests to encroaching marsh at an unprecedented rate. Previous research found a rate of forest to marsh conversion of up to 1.2 square kilometers year one during the 19th and 20th centuries, but these studies evaluated small-scale changes, suffered from data gaps, or are substantially outdated. We replicated and updated these studies with Landsat satellite imagery covering the entire Big Bend region from 2003 to 2016, and corroborated results with in-situ landscape photography and high-resolution aerial imagery. Our analysis of satellite and aerial images from 2003 to 2016 indicates a rate of approximately 10 square kilometers year one, representing an increase of over 800%. Areas previously found to be unaffected by the decline are now in rapid retreat. Coastal habitats are among the most vulnerable to climate disruption through sea level rise, storm surge, and subsequent saltwater intrusion. Williams et al. 1999, DeSantis et al. 2007, Chen et al. 2017, Karwananjan 2019. Recent observed rates of global warming of the atmosphere and ocean waters and subsequent sea level rise find that observations agree with business as usual expectations. That is, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Assessment Report 5 RCP 8.5, predict for the global average acceleration, and note that local rates may differ substantially from the global average. As sea level rises, low-terrain tidal marshland migrates landward to encroach on and ultimately replace coastal forest, thereby creating ghost forests. Donnelly and Burtness 2001, Doyle et al. 2010, Koch et al. 2015. The coastal areas of northwest Florida along the Gulf of Mexico are low-lying regions of largely undeveloped tidal marsh and hardwood forest. Collectively, the region is known as the Big Bend. Further, McCarthy et al. Documented the decline of silbulpalm, one of the most prevalent tree species in the Big Bend coastal floodplain, within a subset of the region in 2010. In-situ photography corroborated the decline and revealed that the loss of forest manifests as a combination of canopy loss and forest thinning. Our primary goal is to update and expand the analyses with a synoptic quantification of coastal forest decline using satellite and aerial imagery collected between 2003 and 2016 for the entire Big Bend. Guiding and corroborating the observed patterns are time series of professional landscape photography capturing unprecedented loss of coastal hardwood forest. Satellite analyses used cloud-free Landsat 5 and Landsat 8 imagery downloaded from earthexplorer.uss.gov. The study area spanned two image footprints. The before and after images covering the northern footprint were both acquired in the month of October, while the southern images were both acquired in February to avoid seasonal discrepancies in the change calculation for each pair. All images were radiometrically calibrated and converted to top of atmosphere reflectance using the NV software prior to computing normalized difference vegetation index using the red and near-infrared bands. NV is a standard remote sensing index used to identify vegetation from the characteristic low-red and high near-infrared reflectance patterns of photosynthesizing material. NV maps were then restricted to the region of interest as defined by Robb and Stumpf, before being further restricted to coastal hardwood forest as defined by Gesselbracht et al. Using cooperative land cover map polygons. By clipping these data to this vegetation dataset, we avoid the need to choose an arbitrary NV threshold above which to consider vegetation versus non-vegetation surfaces, and avoided areas of silviculture that would bias the results. NV values tend to be substantially higher in forested vegetation than grasses, so even if forest loss revealed undergrowth, there should still be a decline in NV. and V difference was calculated using raster calculator in ArcMap v10.5 by subtracting the early map from the later map. Values greater than or equal to 0 were excluded from further analysis. Artifacts at the edges of the images were clipped out of final products manually. For consistency, we calculated rates based on the more conservative 2003-2016 period rather than parsing the region into northern and southern rates.
If you're getting tired, you can always grab a glass of water, some popcorn, and go to my Patreon to support me.
Elevation model was created by downloading and mosaicing 1 arcsecond DEM data from the national map to calculate V decline by elevation range. DEM floating point data were converted to integers by rounding up to the nearest integer and extracting those areas that intersect the CLC forest polygons. CLC data excluded silviculture forests, but we additionally restricted V change maps to elevations lower than 1.2 meters to further avoid any bias that may be introduced by including inland or upland habitats that may have undergone anthropogenic-driven change through development. Aerial photographs were downloaded for target areas to visually verify the loss of forest as thinned canopies and downed trunks. Google Earth Pro time series imagery was also used to corroborate the loss of forest in these regions as an independent source of verification data. Google Earth Pro collects a multitude of independent imagery sources and collates time series. To determine the rate of degradation relative to proximity to the Gulf, we created buffer polygons in ArcMap v10.5 from 0 to 2000 meters at 500 meters intervals from the coastline inland. And V decline maps were clipped to each buffered region. Cedar Key monthly mean high water and the trended MSL data were downloaded for the period 1940-2016 based on the MSL datum. Linear trends were fitted to the monthly MHHW data from the beginning of each decade through 2016. The trended data had been pre-processed with average seasonal cycle and linear trend removed. The study area covered 540 square kilometers of coastal forest within 2 kilometers of the coastline to coincide approximately with the region addressed by Robin Stumpf. We measured the change in coastal hardwood forest over time using the NV that we computed using cloud-free Landsat satellite imagery from 2003 to 2016. Aerial photography collected over this time frame corroborates the die-off of trees and landward migration of marsh habitat. Coastal forest along Florida's Gulf Coast is dying at an unprecedented rate. The rapid die-off of this largely undeveloped forest is resulting in irreversible habitat loss. This likely has impacts on the biodiversity of the region and enhances the physical and socio-economic vulnerability of the few populated areas that dot this coastline. We expect similar change to occur throughout Florida's more populated coastal regions where shoreline protections and beach nourishment projects may be delaying the impacts of rising seas. Esteves van Finkel 1998. Robin Stumpf 2016. The types of coastal impacts identified here need to be incorporated into natural resource and urban planning processes to guide planning for adaptation and resiliency throughout the state.
So in conclusion, no matter what you think, doesn't matter if you're a Republican or even a member of the Democratic Party of the United States, Joe Manchin, and you live in the southeast of the United States, you can't pretend the issue is not gonna affect you. So what can you do when you're voting? You need to do some research to know if the politician that you're supporting actually do know the environmental agenda covered or not in his platform, and know how to fight for what you think is good for our planet. I can keep talking about bad politicians, but it will not make sense at all. But really, people, you gotta fight for your vote. And be sure that that you are supporting a candidate that does not make fake promises, but actually do what is the right thing for the environment. As always, thank you very much for watching today's episode. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel, and if you have any doubts, you can always send me an email at hugo.loh@gmail.com.